You're standing in your childhood kitchen, watching your dad flip through the Sunday paper. He's pointing at a house listing, $120,000 for a three-bedroom with a yard, and muttering something about how in my day, we just saved 20% and bought what we could afford. You nod politely while silently calculating that the same house now costs $450,000 and your salary, adjusted for inflation, somehow buys you less than his did in 1987. Here's the thing. Your parents aren't wrong about everything, but they're operating on a playbook written for an economy that doesn't exist anymore. And if you're still taking their financial advice without running the numbers for 2026, you're not being respectful. You're being financially self-destructive. Let me show you what I mean. Meet Marcus. He's 28, makes $59,800 a year. That's the median for his age bracket according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics data from late 2025. His dad, at 28 in 1995, made roughly $32,000, which sounds like peanuts until you adjust for inflation. That $32,000 in 1995 dollars is about $65,000 today. So Marcus actually makes less than his father did at the same age, despite having a college degree and working in tech support instead of factory maintenance. But wait, it gets worse. Marcus's dad bought a house in 1995 for $110,000. He put down 20%, $22,000, and got a 30-year mortgage at 7.5%. His monthly payment was roughly $615. That was about 23% of his gross monthly income. Marcus wants to buy that same house today. It's now worth $380,000. He has $15,000 saved, 10% down, which his dad would call irresponsible. But Marcus can't wait another 3 years to save 20% because prices are rising faster than his savings rate. He gets a mortgage at 6.2%, which sounds better than his dad's rate until you realize the principal is tripled. His monthly payment? $2,850, including taxes and insurance. That's 57% of his gross monthly income. The math is brutal. Marcus isn't less responsible than his father. He's playing a game where the difficulty slider got moved to expert while he wasn't looking. Meanwhile, your mom is still telling you to just save your money in the bank. She's not wrong that saving matters, but she's wrong about where. As of January 2026, the national average savings account pays 0.39% APY. Meanwhile, inflation is sitting at 2.7% according to the latest consumer price index data. Every dollar Marcus parks in that safe savings account loses 3% of its purchasing power annually. Over 10 years, that's not a gap. That's a chasm. Your parents grew up in an era where financial literacy meant balancing a checkbook and avoiding credit card debt. They didn't have to understand buy now, pay later schemes that now account for $70 billion in annual transactions, growing 20% per year since 2021. They didn't navigate gig economy income streams or side hustles that pay in unpredictable lump sums. They certainly didn't face a world where 46% of Gen Z and millennials report living paycheck to paycheck, despite median household incomes hovering around $63,000. Honestly, the financial anxiety is palpable. Northwestern Mutual's 2025 data shows that 69% of Americans say financial uncertainty makes them feel depressed and anxious. That's up from 61% just 2 years ago. Among Gen Z, 39% report feeling this way weekly. Your parents' advice to just work hard and save doesn't account for the psychological toll of watching grocery prices climb 3.1% in 2025 alone, with beef up 16.4% and coffee nearly 20%. When half of young adults can't cover 3 months of expenses with emergency savings, telling them to budget better isn't advice. It's a dismissal of structural reality. But here's where I need you to pay attention, because this isn't just a vent session about how hard things are. This is about recognizing that different eras require different strategies. Your parents' golden rules were built on 3 assumptions that no longer hold. First, that housing prices would rise roughly with wages. Second, that a single income could support a middle-class lifestyle. Third, that loyalty to one employer would be rewarded with pensions and career advancement. None of those are true in 2026. The Federal Reserve kept rates steady at 3.5% to 3.75% in January 2026, after cutting 3 times in late 2025. What does that mean for you? It means the era of free money is over, but borrowing isn't cheap either. Auto loans are averaging 7% for new cars and nearly 8% for used, with the average new car transaction price now above $50,000. Your dad's advice to buy used and drive it until it dies still works, but the used car market is so tight that a 3-year-old Honda costs almost as much as a new one did 5 years ago. Meanwhile, credit card debt just hit $1.28 trillion nationally, with the average balance around $6,523 and interest rates at 22.83%. Gen X is drowning with average balances near $9,600, but Gen Z isn't far behind at $3,493, and they're just getting started. When your parents tell you to avoid debt, they're picturing a world where you could. In 2026, 81% of adults have at least one credit card, and 46% carry a balance month to month. The system isn't designed for you to avoid debt. It's designed to make debt profitable for institutions while keeping you on a treadmill. Let's talk about the psychological trap your parents don't see. They came of age during the great inflation of the 1970s, so they learned to fear rising prices. But they also experienced the greatest bull market in history from 1982 to 2000. They watched their home values triple and their 401k's balloon. They have what behavioral economists call recency bias, the belief that the future will look like the recent past. You don't have that luxury. You've lived through 2008, 2020, and the inflation surge of 2022, 2023. You know markets crash. You know jobs disappear. And yet the data shows you're still not investing. Only 21% of Gen Z invested in the stock market in the past year, up from 15% in 2024, but still criminally low. Your parents tell you the stock market is too risky, but they're collecting dividends from portfolios they built when shares were cheap. Meanwhile, you're holding cash that's melting like snow in July. The TIA Institute's 2025 Personal Finance Index reveals the depth of the problem. Gen Z correctly answered only 38% of financial literacy questions. They're failing at understanding risk, with only 32% comprehension in that category. Your parents think they're protecting you by warning you away from complexity, but they're leaving you financially illiterate in a world that demands sophistication. Here's the escape route. It's not about rejecting everything your parents taught you. It's about translating it for an economy that runs on different physics. First, housing. Your parents say rent is throwing money away. In 2026, that's sometimes true and sometimes catastrophically false. With mortgage rates at 2% and home prices at historic highs, the break-even point for buying versus renting has stretched to 7 to 10 years in many markets. If you're not planning to stay put for at least a decade, renting and investing the difference in a low-cost index fund will likely beat homeownership. The math is brutal but clear. A $400,000 house with 3% annual appreciation gains, $12,000 in equity yearly, but costs $34,200 in mortgage payments, taxes, and maintenance. That's not wealth building. That's a very expensive forced savings account with negative liquidity. Second, debt. Your parents say all debt is bad. That's death by ducks. Small wrong decisions that accumulate into catastrophe. In 2026, debt is a tool, not a moral failing. The average student loan balance is $39,547, and for graduate degree holders, it can hit $102,790. That's terrifying until you realize that the wage premium for a bachelor's degree is still roughly $765 per week compared to $980 for high school graduates. Wait, no, let me correct that. High school graduates earn $980 weekly, bachelor's degree holders earn $1,747. That's a 78% premium. The debt is expensive, but the alternative is a lifetime of earnings capped at roughly $51,000 annually versus $90,000 plus for degree holders. The key is strategic debt versus desperate debt. Federal student loans at 5 to 6% with income-driven repayment options? Strategic. Credit card debt at 83% because you needed groceries before payday? Desperate. The difference isn't the amount borrowed, it's the interest rate, the purpose, and your plan to eliminate it. Third, saving versus investing. Your parents' save 10% of your income rule assumes that savings accounts pay meaningful interest. They don't. As of early 2026, high-yield savings accounts are still offering 4 to 5%, but that's down from the peaks of 2023 and likely to fall further as the Fed continues cutting rates. Meanwhile, inflation at 2.7% erodes your purchasing power. You need a new rule: save for emergencies, invest for everything else. The 401k contribution limit for 2026 is $24,500, with an additional $8,000 catch-up if you're over 50. If you're 30 and maxing out your 401k, you're putting away nearly $2,000 monthly pre-tax. Your parents couldn't imagine contributing that much because their housing costs were lower and their employer pensions filled the gap. You don't have a pension. You have a 401k match that averages 4 to 6% if you're lucky. The contribution limit isn't a ceiling, it's a survival target. Fourth, the side hustle. Your parents think gig work is a distraction from a real job. They don't understand that median weekly earnings for full-time workers are $1,214. That's $63,128 annually. But the top 10% are pulling in $4,809 weekly. The gap isn't just about working harder at your day job. It's about developing skills that command premium rates. The 35 to 44 age bracket peaks at $72,020 median annually. But that's the ceiling for average performance. If you're average in 2026, you're falling behind. The uncomfortable truth is that your parents' advice was optimized for an economy with strong unions, defined benefit pensions, affordable housing, and predictable career ladders. That economy died sometime between 2008 and 2020, and we're not getting it back. The new economy demands financial literacy that most Americans don't have. Only 49% of adults can correctly answer basic financial questions, and Gen Z is at 38%. So what do you do with this knowledge? You stop apologizing for not following advice that doesn't fit your reality. You start running the numbers yourself. When your dad tells you to buy a house, you calculate the opportunity cost of that down payment in an S&P 500 index fund. When your mom warns you about credit cards, you get one with 2% cash back, auto-pay it in full monthly, and build credit while earning $400 annually on spending you'd do anyway. You recognize that the system is rigged, but that rigging has rules. The banks want you in debt at 22% interest. The dealerships want you in an 84-month auto loan. The BNPL apps want you to split that $200 purchase into 4 payments, so you don't feel the pain. Your defense isn't abstinence, it's mathematics. You calculate the true cost of every decision, including the invisible cost of not deciding. Marcus, from our earlier example, he's not doomed, he's adapting. He stopped trying to save 20% for a house and instead maxes his Roth IRA while renting a small apartment. He drives a 2018 Civic he bought with cash. He uses a 2% cashback card for everything and pays it off weekly. His credit score is 780, which gets him a 4.88% auto loan rate when he needs it, compared to the 15.85% that subprime borrowers pay. He's not living like his parents did at 28. He's living like he needs to in order to be financially secure at 48. The math is brutal, but it's also liberating. Once you see the trap, you can step around it. Your parents' advice isn't evil, it's just expired, and you now have knowledge you can't unignore.